Welcome to the Art Bazaar, a podcast that chats with artists of all types to explore the depths of creativity, brought to you by the Alternative Gallery. We'll be releasing new episodes every Wednesday with bonus episodes dropping randomly. If you like what you're hearing, you can support this podcast by going to thealternativegallery.com and clicking on the podcast tab. I'm your host, Brandon Wonder, creative director of the Alternative Gallery, a nonprofit arts organization in Allentown, PA, run through the efforts of dedicated volunteers. Today on Art Bazaar, we have the legendary Brother JT, who's been making music of all sorts for over 40 years. His work ranges in style from garage pop to psychedelic, punk, and can be very experimental at times. JT has been in scores of bands over the years, including the Original Sins. He put out his first album under the name Brother JT in 1991, releasing nearly 30 albums in that time. He's toured with bands such as The Replacements, Kinks, and the Ramones, and his music videos played on MTV, when that used to mean something. You can stream his tunes and, of course, purchase physical copies of his work by visiting brotherjt.com. JT, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, you've played at the gallery here a bunch of times over the years, so I guess I want to start off by thanking you for your support and continued collaboration.
Yeah, we're just happy to play at this point, just anywhere, but we like playing here. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Of course, it's very helpful for both the bands and the venues to be able to work together in this way. Of course, we need each other. How many times do you think you've played here over the years?
Oh, probably a dozen. I don't really know. I mean, when did you guys really start?
Well, we started in 2012, moved in this building in 2013.
Okay.
And like 2013 to 14 is when we really started to go heavy in with the music.
Yeah, so that's 10 years, and we're probably twice a year maybe. So,
yeah,
probably.
Yeah, and every time you play here, you always bring a great crowd. I know every time there's a scheduled show with Brother JT, people are excited.
Yeah, well, I think it's these days we just play so little that you maybe get people out that ordinarily, if we were playing more regularly, wouldn't come out. So that works in that way.
Well, I think too, you got to give yourself credit. You have a lot of staying power with your music. These dedicated audiences that just follow you from space to space.
Yeah,
sometimes state to state.
Yeah, when we get out of state, like it's been rough in the last since the pandemic hit. Just everything just stopped, and all those bookers and promoters that are 40 years younger than me forgot who I was, or and you have to sort of try to reintroduce yourself constantly. I prefer quality to quantity anyway. So good gigs, a few good gigs, as opposed to like endless gigs.
Sure. Did you notice that maybe a bunch of venues closed during the pandemic?
I know that some did, like out of town particularly, but there weren't that many to begin with around here, at least for me. I know there's clubs, but a lot of clubs don't cater to original music. You have the Fun House and you have you guys and, like art spaces kind of thing.
Well, I guess you need to be in spaces that kind of treat you like an artist, right?
Doesn't really matter.
Well, I guess by that I mean one of the common issues we have here in the Lehigh Valley, especially in Allentown, is when bars or restaurants want bands to play, they want them to play covers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There is a whole culture of cover bands that I'm not really familiar with.
Yeah.
And it always amazes me to the extent that we're in the same physical space, but we might as well be on another planet as far as these people are concerned. Like, they don't know from Brother JT or anything, or the Sins even. It's sort of like they're in their world, we're in ours, and they rarely commingle. And, well, that's the way things are.
Yeah. So you're not a cover band. How would you describe what you do then?
Just listen to a lot of music and put it in the blender and turn on the blender and pour it out. And that's, as you said, we start with garage music, which is the most primitive form of kind of rock and roll you can do, laziest form. And then you mix in some psychedelics and pop, love of the 3-minute pop song. No one's reinventing the wheel. It's like the wheel's there. You're just putting your own little spin on the wheel. Try to make it something like our own. But it's coming from the same sources.
And I love when artists can try things and be experimental. What kind of drives you to be creative and experimental in that way?
I wish I was more experimental. I wish I could get out of the mindset of just being kind of on the nose about a lot of things. It's hard for somebody like me. I'm a performer before I'm an artist or anything. I like to perform. I like applause. So whatever works, especially live, is what I'm going to try to go for. And that's like an addiction. Like you want that applause. So you're going to do these X, Y, and Z, and hopefully, play the songs fast, make them snappy. There's an art to that. But in other ways, I wish I could just loosen up and say, I don't care if anybody claps. But that's what I am. Like I had been the original Sins, which was like a 3-minute pop song type of pop punk kind of group. And at a certain point during the 90s, the audiences were changing. Like they were just kind of standing there, whereas they used to dance and all that. And when I saw that, I just started thinking, I don't want to bust my brains out all the time and just like have people standing there. So maybe I'll do something less in your face, more like they can just be casual and I'll be casual. And that was Brother JT. We used to actually sit just to avoid assuming the pose of the rock people, like just, we're going to rock your brains out now. And be a little calmer about it, be a little more, like you say, experimental, improvisatory. We used to write songs that were just riffs, and we still play some of them, because I used to play with guys in Philly, and we couldn't practice. So I just say, almost at the gig, say, okay, this is the new one. It's 2 chords, and it does not change. So
you couldn't practice because you were in the Valley, they were in Philly?
I don't remember practicing with the guys I was playing with in Philly, because we had the Sins here. But I'd go down to Philly and we'd have a gig and say, well, I must have run it over with them at some point. But some of it was sort of as simple as me starting to strum the riff and everyone just kind of fall in and the song becomes what it becomes. It almost was based on me getting altered, to the extent that I would consider it's more than a riff now. It's more like a wave you're riding. And in order to do that, I had to loosen up considerably. And that, over a period, we would do tours, and I would notice that I'm not feeling too well, ever. So I felt, I better get back into just writing good songs.
And for a lot of musicians, there's the sanctity of the practice space. And you mentioned practicing. What kind of practice spaces have you had over the years, or even just jammed in?
Well, for the longest time, we were at that building down on 15th, just below Allen, I think, or something like that. It was a big warehouse building that had an elevator and all that, and I was in there in the Sins, so that's going back like to the 90s and all that, and it wasn't ideal, but it was there, and now it's not there because it burned down.
That's a Hyman building.
Yeah, is that what?
Yeah,
I didn't even know the name. I just knew that we'd be going in that scary elevator down into the basement where it smelled like malfunctioning plumbing.
And it's strange because most of the practice spaces I visited for musicians over my whole life have kind of been that.
Yeah.
It's like they don't really build out spaces anywhere for actual bands. Like, is it that no one cares, or what is that?
I don't know. I mean, in Philly, you can go and you rent it by the hour, but I don't know. Maybe there is a place. The few places I called up here never got back to me, so they couldn't have been that interested in this. But it would be nice to just go plug and play, and you pay your $25. But that doesn't really, as far as I know, exist around here.
Yeah.
And so we have to rely on, and at this point we're playing in our drummer's basement, which is very comfortable too, but yeah.
Yeah, I know with this building, before they did their renovations, putting the artist studios here, it was kind of that mishmash of warehouse space and random practice spaces, and the owner didn't really know what bands were here. There were a bunch spread out throughout the building when he bought it from the previous owner, and they just had issues with like trying to chase people down for rent and everyone having keys, and I think it put a bad taste in their mouth, and they didn't actually want bands here. When we first took over the space, the Alternative Gallery, when we moved to the Cigar Factory, and we went at live music, it was an uphill battle to get them to allow us to have live music. We had to kind of inch into it, and obviously it's gone well since now a main aspect of what we do in some ways is a music venue. But I think a lot of these developers just assume that bands are going to like screw them over or trash the place, and that's a very small minority of bands that you might work with. And if you're running out shitty conditions, what kind of people is that going to attract?
Right. Well, that's the thing. But I mean, they probably have a point about some bands. Like
Sure.
they're not.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but for me, it's arts first. So what can we do to provide more spaces for musicians in that way? What do you think we really need? Like those shared practice spaces?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I wish there was a dedicated place where you'd have 4 or 5 rooms, and there's a back line there you can plug into, and you pay a certain amount, and then so there's not a question of you leaving junk there or
you're bringing minimal stuff in and out.
Yeah, right. It's just I'm sure you can make a living doing that. Yeah, that would be appealing, and if it could be kept clean and maybe no smoking or something like that.
Yeah, it's something we definitely want to consider in the future to provide, because that's one of the main questions I get from artists is, do you have a practice space?
Yeah,
and I'm like,
right.
well, we had some in the basement, but we can't rent them out because they need a bunch of work. Like, I'm not going to be that slumlord like other guys have been.
Yeah.
The main gallery, we tend to let some, friends, bands and stuff like that, when we're not having anything going on, come in and jam. That's been extremely helpful, but...
Right.
I agree with you. I think we need to have more spaces that have backlines, multiple dedicated spaces for jamming and just live music. Maybe even recording in those spaces too, right?
Yeah.
Just
sure.
even if it's just demo stuff.
It's easy enough, to set up mics and just leave them there. If you want to record your practice, maybe you pay a few extra bucks and there you go. Or, actually record.
And you do that a lot, right? A lot of the work you've done as Brother JT, you've recorded in your practice space. Is that correct?
Well, definitely the one album we did, a lot of the stuff I just end up doing. Like we have a new thing out now that I started during the pandemic, so I didn't really have access to the fellas. I didn't really want to do like a live band kind of album anyway, but I recorded it in my house with drum loops and all that stuff. And then I would take it to the drummer and say, could you play along? It's Jamie, the drummer. Could you play along with us? And got a nice mix between live and canned. It's neat, the technology you have now, that you can just plug into a laptop and record your basic tracks and then take it home and do the overdubs without boring an engineer or the rest of the band,
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think especially for younger people, it's really opened up the world for them to be able to create without any strings attached.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's doing it. It's just a question of how to cut through the glut of available material out there, and like there's a big internet, and how do you get people through to your stuff, and I'm terrible at that, but
yeah, marketing is an art unto itself, and that's kind of what the alternative gallery likes to do. Like, we realize that most artists just want to focus on being an artist, and because us artists aren't good at the business side of things, we usually get taken advantage of by business people. So we are trying to create an environment where artists can be artists and we help them do the rest. It's something we're trying to grow and do better, of course. But I think it's a main need for artists of all types, even visual, filmmaker, musician. Everyone kind of needs the same thing. But I want to go back because I know Tornado Juice, which you did in 2018.
Yeah.
You said that was the first album you had recorded in a studio in a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a specific reason you decided to record that in the studio?
Well, the label who put it out, Thrill Jockey, I would send the person there that makes the decisions, the recordings I'd done. And she said, well, I like the songs, but can you make them better recorded? And I said, yeah, I can do that. I know this fellow that we recorded at his studio. We had recorded with the Sins there like in 96. And he's very good at what he does. And so we did the basic tracks again there. And then I took it home and overdubbed till the cows came home. Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds different. I don't say everything like it's better than other stuff, but I think it managed to please the people at the label enough to put it out.
Yeah, I like that record a lot. It's probably out of all your albums the one I've heard the most because I don't remember if it was the release show, but you played here when you first put it out. I remember that. And it was also the same time when you did the rooftop session.
Right, yeah.
Right all at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was great. That was a memorable experience. And that was, I think, maybe the last time I'd seen our buddy Ron, too.
Yeah, he passed in, I think, early 2019.
Yeah, not long after we recorded that session.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Yeah, shout out to our buddy Ron. We miss you and love you, buddy.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
That was a shocker when I heard about Ron, man. Great, heart of gold, great guy. That shared experience with musicians, it's something special because something like a painter, you kind of create on your own. And when you have this art form where you're depending on other people,
Right.
it kind of bonds you in certain ways.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and you learn from everybody. You know, even if they're not really your type of person that you're used to being with. Like you pick up on things from them that you wouldn't otherwise figure out. And I've been so lucky with the people that I've worked with. You always have these horror stories of bands, you know, like there's always a guy in the band that's self-destructive or something. I haven't really experienced that.
Yeah.
You know,
I know the guys that play with you, they all look up to you and are kind of honored at the chance to play side by side with you.
yeah,
It's
they're good guys.
In their own words. Even the tape swap radio, the rooftop session, the interview, the guys were talking about how much they love playing with you and how much they learned. And there's that great saying that everyone you meet knows something you don't know.
Yeah,
and I think it's a very humbling thought to have.
definitely. Yeah,
and you know, especially if you can bring that into a creative space with a band like you just explained. I mean, that's a really great take on things.
when you can look at it like, I'm not going to practice, I'm going to hang out with my friends, you know, that's a good situation because
Absolutely.
That's almost as important as are they good players.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they're good players too.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that makes artists really lucky is we discovered something that we love to do. I've met a lot of people in my life that maybe they're in their 50s or 60s and they still know what they like. They still know what they love. And I think that's one of the things that artists kind of take for granted. Is like, I found something I love, whether I make money from it or not.
Oh yeah,
This fulfills me.
exactly.
How fulfilling is creating music for you?
Well, aside from just music too, I mean, just anything where I get a result from thinking, from creating, that's my life. And I wish it paid the bills, but it does not. And yet I can't imagine what I'd do without it. And I think there are people out there who don't have something like that and they're looking for it, you know, and it doesn't have to be creative. It just has to be something that you almost naturally do well or just enjoy doing, and just go with it, I'd say. And don't worry about the money end of it, and just fill your day with the joy of experiencing life. In my case, I can actually record it in various ways, you know, and so there's something left for people, you know, this is what I saw. I was here, and this is what I saw.
One of the purposes of me doing this podcast is almost a way of documenting oral histories, which is one of the reasons I asked you a question like practice spaces, because that stuff's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, that practice space that you had, that I'm sure there's all kinds of insane tales you can spin from what happened there over the years. Now it's just a parking lot. That
Yes.
anyone driving by would never know any of those things. Maybe a masterpiece record was written there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of energy was down there. It's happening, various kinds of energy. And yeah, I mean, I say I look fondly on it. At the time, I didn't. But now I kind of wish I could go visit it, but I can't. But you know.
What were those early years like for you with starting to play music?
It was a social thing, and it still is. I'm not a gadfly, you know. I'm not good at being social. And yet, if I have a guitar in my hand and hopefully a mic, I'm completely at ease with people. Otherwise, I feel ill at ease. So it was a form of socializing mostly, but I also was lucky enough to get in. I had been living with a guy, or he lived near me, whose brother was starting a label in Hoboken called Bar None. And this was like in '87. And this guy knew about my music, and he, I think, almost surreptitiously sent a tape to his brother. And his brother liked it. He got back to me, and all of a sudden we're putting a record out, you know, under the Original Sins. And it, you know, got some press, and we were on our way.
Where did you record that first tape there?
Oh, the tape that I probably, geez, that
In your
was
bedroom?
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, just sort of like very crude demos, you know, and
Do you still have those demos?
maybe. Yeah, I probably do. I mean, I'm a completist, so I probably have
Great.
them. They might have been available in some form. Like on my website, on Brother JT, if you go to the albums page, you can look, and it's like almost everything that I did as Brother JT is up there that you can stream or download, unless it was in a commercial release. And there's probably one of those up there that contains a lot of old demos, you know, like I forget what Demonstrations was the name of the the so-called album.
I love that you've released so much that you're not even sure.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure it's up there. I mean, there was a lot of work putting that up, and I hope people take advantage of it. Not that you could ever really absorb it all, but if you're curious about it, you can always go look, and the most obscure stuff is there. Too.
No, it's great. And do you prefer that people buy physical copies or stream? What's your take on that?
I'm happy with whatever they're happy with. Like this time around, the record's called Shaky Jet Loner, which is an anagram for John Allen Terlesky, which is my actual name. And I decided not to even do CDs because I'm not going to pay for vinyl. That's way too expensive. And people don't like CDs. It's like they're repulsed by them at this point.
Well, they are coming back. According to Discogs, the last 5 years. And vinyl last year for the first time outsold CDs since 1987.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm a big believer in physical media, so I know it's expensive.
I mean, we could have tried. I was really hoping the label would put it out, but I don't know. They just didn't want to, so I figured, well, I'll put it up there in the form of MP3 downloads, and people get it that way. That saves me a lot of trouble.
I would imagine Bandcamp's the best way to grab something like that.
I don't know if it's on there. I know it's on Spotify for streaming, and I think it's on Amazon, but mostly it's just like if you go to the front page of my website, the things there, you just like hit the download button and you can just download it. But that's the easiest for me to think of as doing. But
But how does this stuff support you the most? Like you need to have.
I don't make money from it.
Well, I know Spotify doesn't really pay musicians anything.
No. When it comes to streaming, I've never received much at all.
We're making it hard for artists to exist. I mean, one $10 CD, how many thousands, like 2,500 streams to make the same income.
Yeah.
I can't support a model like that. And I think it's kind of up to artists to band together to be like, we're not accepting this shit. Like, we need to make a living off of our, especially when the founder is making billions of dollars off of these musicians.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I gave up on this being a business for me like a long time ago. I mean, it was nice that all the labels have been really nice to put my stuff out, but I don't think they're making it. I think they break even if they're lucky, and that's fine. The main thing about the labels is I thought, well, at least they'll sort of get it out to people. They'll distribute it.
Yeah.
I can't really distribute this, but I am trying to at least give the songs a day in the sun for them, like get them out in the sun. Because they're important to me. I mean, it's like I worked hard on those, and now my idea is try to do little animated videos for not each song, but I think I've done 5 so far for this album, and put them up on Facebook and Instagram and all that. And
are those out yet?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you go to the Brother JT Facebook, you can sort of scroll and you'll see the various videos, and it's very crudely animated.
You're doing the animating too?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
artist of many talents here.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. I'm a collage type of guy, so I take stuff from my artwork, throw it in there, the songs, and just the scrollings that I do. I think that I'm getting better at it. So, and it's sort of a pleasure. It's sort of I dread doing it, but I try to get a little something out every week.
Well, I feel like if you didn't dread doing it, it'd be a little too easy.
Yeah, and it's the drawing, constant drawing. That I'm trying to find a way to do it much less. I'm getting down to like 1 frame per second, which is easy.
Wow!
But then you have to do transitions between the frames and all that. But
yeah.
It's neat when it's done. Like I dread getting started, but when I get started and I say, okay, this could actually work, then when I'm done, I'm pretty happy. That is fulfilling, yeah.
And it's great that you're still challenging yourself in that way as an artist. I think some people, they kind of get stuck where they're comfortable and never goes anywhere further.
Yeah, my idea was that you can send somebody an MP3 in an email or something, but if you send them a video, they're a lot more likely maybe to look at it and listen, because that's the way things are going. It's funny you said about MTV. I don't even know if they play music on that channel. I haven't looked at it.
Well, and they officially dropped music television. Now it's just MTV.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's and there's always that meme that I see where it's like this future civilization. It says if MTV never stopped playing music videos, we would be a much more advanced civilization. Which they're probably not wrong. I mean, the concept is there that if we took the arts more serious.
Mm-hmm.
I think society would be more progressed. So I'm going back to some of your earlier years. What were the early influences in like getting your first start with that? Because I think the early years are really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that made me and probably scores and hundreds of people, other thousands of people, want to think they can do this was when I discovered the Velvet Underground, which would have been like around 1981, 82, would have been 19 or something like that. And when you hear that group, your immediate thought is, I can do that, because they were not like slick musicians. They were just very primitive players, but it was the ideas behind the songs that really came through. And the rougher that they did them, the more almost experimental they did them, the more it worked, the idea, like it bolstered the idea. When you hear that and then you pick up a guitar and start making feedback with it and say, I'm doing that, and I don't have to sing because of Lou Reed. He actually could sing, but he made a virtue of not singing well and talking through things and all that. And that was definitely the big push.
Would you say that that's kind of the same for a lot of early punk music as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the appeal. Like the shortest distance between just doing nothing and making something compelling, I think, is plugging in an electric guitar with a lot of amplification or distortion, and you will get a reaction. It's like you don't have to do years of studying or playing the piano or something. It's just immediate reaction to that, driven by your own emotion, and it just gives you authority. The electric guitar. I'm not putting down other instruments, but it is the lazy man's instrument, really.
Well, I know you played with a lot of bands back then. What were some of the bands that you played with that you want to highlight?
I think I started out, the first thing I was doing, first gigs I ever did was in a band called Senseless Hate, which featured famous record store man Joe Hanna. There was a group called the Mentors that was like sort of like, I don't know what you'd call it, just dirt punk, where they wore black hoods and all this, and those vile songs. And we sort of were doing something like that. And that they had maybe 3 or 4 gigs, I think, total. And then I played bass in that, and I was just there. And then it was good experience, though. And then I saw an ad somewhere, probably at Joe's store, looking for a guitarist who can play, and they listed all these 60s garage groups. And I said, I know those groups. And that would have been the Creatures. So that's where I met those guys, and we played with them for a year or two. And really the drummer and the bass player formed the rhythm section that would be the Original Sins. So that was really, Senseless Hate, the Creatures, and then the Original Sins. And then I was kind of busy with them for a while. And then out of that eventually came Brother JT.
When did you start touring with some of the bigger bands in Europe?
I did one tour of Europe with the Sins, and that was with various groups. We didn't have like a main headliner we played with, but that was the only time I played a tour in Europe. That would have been 91, I think. And then we did like a tour of the U.S. with the Judy Bats. But as far as the big groups we played with, they were like one-offs. We opened for the Kinks at the Tower Theater in 1988, I think, one of those years. It was 2 nights, I believe. Yeah, 2 nights. And we weren't even announced. There was curtains, and curtains opened, and there was like 3,000 people suddenly going, and
wow.
And they thought we were the Kinks.
Wow.
And shortly they learned after that we're not the Kinks. And I don't think I ever played a faster set. It was very exhilarating, but you did not stop between songs because you were dreading what the response would be. But they gave us a nice response, and got to see the Kinks and all that. And we played the Ramones a few times. But that, again, it's always such a blur with those guys, like the bigger acts, because you're just there to fill in time, and you try to survive.
You didn't get to hang with them or anything like that?
No, I think the extent was we were sitting, it was the airport music hall the one time, and we were sitting around in whatever they considered the green room, I guess. And in walks Dee Dee, and followed by Johnny, and Dee Dee says something, "You know where the bathroom is?" And Johnny says, "Don't talk to them." And then later, I think that night, I believe their road manager punched out a girl who was in a band that
Oh.
we knew, and so that was my colorful story, the Ramones. But I did eventually talk to Johnny on the phone as a part of an interview. I used to write for the Morning Call a little bit, and so I had a nice little interview. It was at the end of their career, and he was really nice. And he asked, "Did you play with us?" And I said, "Yeah, a couple times." And did we do anything bad or something? I said, no, you guys were great.
That's awesome. The Airport Music Hall, that was kind of one of the main venues back then.
Yeah.
A lot of punk shows.
Yeah, I mean, we played with the Replacements there, and we played with Social Distortion and the Screaming Trees. We didn't do a lot of shows there. We did more at Club Pascal, which was like around the back. It was a smaller venue, And I hardly even remember those shows.
And I remember somebody telling me that Airport Music Hall, they used to do a lot of Sunday, like matinee shows.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it was there for quite a while. I mean, it was huge. It was a bingo hall. But I don't remember doing a lot more than those few shows I mentioned, though. That was in with like one of the management companies, and unless they were friendly with you, you didn't play there. So.
And I think it's one of the things that's missing right now. There's not a lot of Sunday events. And like here, Allentown, like if we want to be a real city, we got to have shows on Sundays. You can't be a city and be closed off the weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, that's one of the things we're striving to do, having more live music, not just inside at venues, but outdoors as well. Have you done a lot of outdoor shows?
No.
Arts Fest, you played Arts Fest, right?
We did play Arts Fest.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the year, right? Like around
And then so, like this time of year, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we did play there the one time. That was fun, yeah. I mean, we don't do a lot of outdoor. We did a porch fest in Philly that was a lot of fun, literally on somebody's stoop.
I love those. It's a really cool idea. I see them, they do them all over the country.
Yeah,
Asheville, I know they do them even in New Orleans sometimes.
They're doing one in College Hill, Easton tomorrow. I got to go check it out.
Oh, wow.
I guess they've been doing it. I just didn't know about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I forget whether there was another one we did, like an outdoor thing, but it's not my thing. I like enclosed, and the audience has no distractions, and they have to look at me and applaud.
So what's your ideal space? Like a little bar, a little club?
The Fun House is sort of like my home away from home.
Cool.
And I mean, we don't play there we used to play there every month for like 10 years. And I'm okay with not doing that, but I'm just saying, like, it's sort of like you touch a base there because it's such a small place. You're standing on the floor with the audience, and you don't mic the instruments because they're too loud, and
they're right there in your face.
Yeah, and it's immediate. Is this song working? Yes or no, right there while you're playing it, because a lot of places there's distance, and here there's no distance. So I'm very comfortable in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that, playing on the floor with the audience, because musicians tend to vary in their opinion of that. Like we've had various staging setups here at the gallery over the years.
Yeah.
For many years, we had just the play on the floor kind of deal, which, like some musicians have loved, and others are like, oh, well, you don't have a stage. Why do you think some musicians don't always like that? What reasons do you think there are behind that?
I'm not a musician. I'm a performer. So musicians, I think, prefer to have a certain amount of control. They want like several monitors and have an order
like
to things.
Very technical.
Yeah, right. And so that they can, and it's fine. I mean, I can do a stage. I don't mind doing a stage. But if I don't have to get a sound guy involved, if I can just sort of like hear the vocals coming off the other wall, I'm most comfortable. But a lot of people, they need very intricate mod or mixes, which you can't do when you're on the same level as the audience, And yeah, I mean, maybe there's the old feeling of a musician. I'm a musician, you're the audience, and never the twice shall meet.
The separation of them, and you're the opposite. You want to be, want to be the one and the same, correct?
Yeah, I just dropped my glasses. I'm sorry. I'm a mess right now.
It's okay. It's all good, my friend.
It's ambient. It's ambient noise for the listeners.
The environmental noise.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of performer, one time I came across your show, Trippin Balls. You want to talk about that a little bit? Explain what it is?
Well, yeah, back in the late 2000s, I guess, mid-2000s, a fella named Mark Brodzig, who has a website called Wood Shop Films. He's an artist, but he had a big space there, and he also was a videographer, and there was a big green screen setup. So he does a lot of video there, and he does little shows with people, not for money. I think their logo or their little intro they have is like a pig dancing around.
It was like Scrapple
yes,
TV.
Someday we'll get paid for this, which is very hopeful. And
those seem to be the real artists, though, man.
Yeah, but his idea was, having seen what I do on stage, was how about you do an interview show talking to people about their experiences with hallucinogenic drugs? And I said, yes, please. And so that just sort of let me cut loose. And, it depended on who I'm talking to, because some people are very good interviews and other people almost like, okay, I got to do this, right?
Yeah.
Which is, that's like, if I did it now, I'd do it differently. But back then it was just sort of like fueled on whatever I was on and a cup of whiskey, and let's see what happens, And they actually got popular enough that I think more people knew about me via that than by my music. And that was fine. And it almost there was some talk. We actually did a meeting in Brooklyn with Vice TV about possibly doing a version of this. And
it would have been perfectly suited for Vice, especially at that time.
Yeah.
Because you had Hamilton on there from...
Right, exactly. And I think I had asked him at the end of the interview, I was like, can I have your job? Because it just seemed like, yeah, that's my kind of job.
So, and for those who don't know what Hamilton's job is, he had a show on Vice. What was the name of the show?
Oh,
Hamilton's Pharmacy? Something like that?
Pharmacopoeia or something
Pharmacopoeia,
like that.
yeah.
I don't know.
And he would just travel around the world trying to find weird and obscure drugs
Yeah.
in faraway places.
And he would take them, evidently, and they would show him, and with various results. And it's funny because he's like the least kind of guy you think would be into that, but
he seemed very calm
Yeah.
and dry.
Yeah, again, like he's a good guy, but not vociferous in any way, or like a performer per se. But yeah, he had the job, and so I thought maybe this was in some weird way a circular thing. We're gonna have a TV show on Vice, and that would have been very nice, But they asked us to do a treatment. It was supposed to be like a wraparound a la midnight movies where you have people talking and during the commercial breaks.
Yeah, like a horror host.
Yeah, right. And we, perhaps foolishly, they let me try to do some kind of treatment of what my idea was at the time. And between me and Mark, we hashed out something and we sent it. And never heard from them again.
No, never.
No, it was one of those things where silence is the new no,
Yeah, sometimes silence speaks volumes.
But then I saw not long after the people that we were talking to, who really seemed to be really into it at the meeting, were no longer working at Vice. And it just looked to me like somebody's idea that maybe he had when he was high or something. And
yeah,
it didn't come out to the real world.
Well, I mean, you're animating now. Would you ever consider like taking that further, getting more structured as far as linear story, or even like a little
I've been talking. Actually thinking about doing something for next year's Allentown Film Fest, because I submitted something this year back in spring and actually won a little plaque and everything.
Awesome.
I never win anything, so I thought I'll really do it this time and do something like a 10-minute little mini movie.
Well, we do an animation festival too. We're bringing it back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Open World Animation Festival. I think your stuff would be perfectly suited. At openworldanimation.com. You have to check it out. We do some blocks with like wild and just crazy stuff, like late night blocks, and I think having some Brother JT animations would be clutch.
Oh no, I got plenty of them. Check them out if you can. That's
absolutely. So what kind of? I know you listen to a lot of different types of music. What are you listening to right now?
Well, geez, on the way over, I was listening to the group Faust. There's like a German krautrock group from the 70s. We actually played with the one time in Chicago, which is amazing to me. That's like 20 years ago, but that we even played with them. They were guys who liked to be on the floor because the drummer brought his drums down and literally nailed them into the floor.
Holy shit.
So we weren't sharing their drums, I know that.
Wow.
But that was an interesting night. And I was listening to Faust, but I have a lot of various things. I like anything sort of psychedelic, but usually from the 60s and 70s. It's hard for me to get into the newer stuff because it seems like there's they're coming from a whole different place that maybe I'm not.
They're riding a different wave.
Yeah, that's their thing, and I totally salute it. It sounds great, but I can't connect emotionally to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
I know when you did the rooftop session here and they asked what bands you liked, you had mentioned Grass, which at the time they were called Grass. They were called Bear Sloth.
Okay.
That was actually the band whose music we used for the theme song here.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
And what's really cool about that was actually the last show we had here at the AG before the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
And they recorded that live. So that's actual live recording from here.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really impressed by those guys.
And they've gotten a lot funkier, really psychedelic. I mean, they've incorporated a saxophone. They've had at some shows multiple drummers.
Neat.
Have you seen them perform anytime?
No,
recently?
because I honestly, aside from here, I don't know where they play. You know, are they from Jersey or?
They're from Allentown, Lehigh Valley area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
thought
believe
they
their
were from
Bandcamp
Jersey.
says Allentown.
All right. Well, then it's like I don't know where they would play, and that's how out of it I am. I guess maybe.
When you are looking for shows, where do you check in?
You know, it's. I don't even bother asking for shows. I just kind of wait for them to come my way. So I don't, you know.
Because we used to have stuff like this. I just gave you a copy of a magazine called Merge. Remember that?
Yeah.
We used to have things like that.
I used to
Pulse
deliver
Weekly.
this.
You used to deliver that one?
Yeah.
What was that? How'd you get started with that?
I had a job, and I still sort of where you're taking free publications and putting them into stores and various places, and Merge, which used to be Mix, maybe, or used to be something other than Merge.
Yeah, LV Mix, I think it was called.
Yeah, and it had several iterations, but I remember just taking it everywhere, and you put a few here and a few there, and so I was doing that for quite a while.
What kind of places did you put those at?
Oh, just any business that would let you, you know, like.
You probably focus on like tattoo shops and record stores and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
but you know, like, yeah, it was a lot of locations, like 100 locations, and I remember that. But then it phased out. So.
Well, don't you think something like that really helped make our scene strong?
Yeah, I mean, it helps. It's rare to see this kind of thing anymore. You know, like that's how you used to find out. Like I used to write a column. I don't know if it ended up in this, but it was like the earlier version of this. Like that was it was still in the paper, but it was sort of like a separate from the entertainment column. I would write a column, you know, about a band that's coming, and I'd have to look at who's coming into town, and it would be a way of sort of getting a digest of, you know, what's going on this weekend, which I have to go online now, you know, and look, and it's little dice. I'd prefer if it was hard copy.
Well, I think we need to bring something like this back.
Yeah.
This is something I'm pushing for. Maybe you start with an online newsletter and then shift into a physical form. I think we got tricked into this idea because we have the internet. We no longer need physical things.
Yeah.
We don't need physical copies of music or movies. We don't need physical releases of publications such as that.
Right.
We don't need brick and mortar stores anymore. I mean, all these things are absurd. Again, we're physical creatures, so we're always going to want these things. And one of the only places that I think that really does a great job of keeping us up to date of what's happening is WMUH, right?
Yeah.
What has your history been like with WMUH?
Well, I mean, I used to DJ there a little, but it was a little far flung for me because I'd spent most of my time at LVR when it was a community station. I guess it's public radio now. I don't even know. It's hard for me to get it in Easton and MUH. They're just like terrible reception. But yeah, I mean, I always had cordial relations with MUH, and you discover music that way. I mean, I remember, you know, like listening to certain people's shows and saying, "Oh, this is the new thing," you know, and that I've gotten out of the habit of that, partly because, you know, at this point I'd always have to stream it.
Yeah.
And it's because radio's, I don't know, is radio reception gone way downhill?
I don't know. Maybe there's just so many more things interfering. That might be
exactly.
That might be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, WMUH, the fact that they're a college radio station, it's very unique because you get these students that might be playing music that maybe it's just their friend's band. They're not playing stuff that's popular, maybe. They're playing things that nobody knows of. And for me, that's how I discovered certain things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite bands of all time is Neurosis. And I first heard them on WMUH. I was like, what is this? I need to know what this is.
Yeah.
I don't know when I would discover them. WMUH is actually, they're hosting a show next week that Brother JT is playing on.
Yeah, that's right.
That's Saturday, October 7th here at the Alternative Gallery.
That's a good segue.
Yeah. Do you know the other bands that are on the bill? Have you met them or played with them before?
I know Pale Fang. I know Chad. He used to play guitar with me for a little while, second guitar, and so I know Chad well. I don't really know the other guys, but I have heard their music, and it's really good. And I don't know the other band. That's, like I said, I'm in Easton. it's like a whole other planet. But I'm looking forward to seeing them both, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be a great night. WMUH, Paul over there, shout out to Paul. He always puts on great shows here. They're well promoted, well attended, always has top-notch bands. So at the very least, it speaks to the quality of what you're doing over there.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's great. I mean, he set up the Sins reunions we did back in, the one, I guess, the one at 2018, I think. Well, this year's really blurry at this point.
Where was that show?
It was at MUH. I'm sorry, it was at Muhlenberg. In their big event thing.
That's right.
And we just did one not too long ago there with a band called Horse Girl. And that was neat because they're young, you know, and they brought a young audience and we brought an old audience. And so there was like a nice mingling.
I like that, you know, and a lot of musicians and bands have told me they actually like playing mixed bills because it kind of mixes crowds.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I said. There's a lot of segregation in Lehigh Valley music. It's sort of like you got your band and you don't go see other bands. But if your band is on with two other bands, then I think it's good, you know, because you can sort of like see what else is going on, because otherwise it's like you don't travel in the same circles.
How do you think we create a more cohesive music scene here in Lehigh Valley?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
mixed bills, publications.
Yeah. I mean, I probably don't know. I shouldn't speak about this, but I feel like there ought to be more venues. You know, like when I think of Valentine, I think of you guys immediately, and then I think, well, maybe Muhlenberg will do a show. And then I'm trying to think street by street, like where are the clubs? And I'm there used to be the Sterling, but they're not.
Yeah, it's really a shame what happened to Sterling.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but they chopped up the Long Bar.
Oh no.
Yeah, that was the Sterling Hotel, which is
that was what
it was actually on the building itself is on the National Register of Historic Places.
Yeah, right.
It was famous because it had the longest bar in the East Coast, and then they turned it into a club, and they just cut the bar to a separate club area.
Right.
And, you know, people think that, like, neighborhood bars and these neighborhood gathering spaces, like, they're bad, right? If a neighborhood bar is run properly, that barkeep is the eyes and ears of a community, which should connect with other spaces.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because you remove all these spaces for people to go to, you're forcing everyone to go to these places kind of on the edge of town. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go and start firing off shots at your neighbor.
Yeah.
The thing is, you're forcing too many people into these spaces who don't know each other, and there's no communal aspect to it. So it ties in perfectly with what you just said to make there be a more like support system for the arts. Mm-hmm. We absolutely need more venues.
Yeah.
You know, as a venue, someone who runs a venue, I want to see more venues because I don't look at these places as competition. I think we should complement each other.
Yeah.
And I think we should be able to focus on what our specialty is and work together. And maybe it's this capitalistic mindset that keeps us from doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to make more money than you make. That proves I'm better than you, to the point that you don't exist. And like I talked about in episodes a couple back on the podcast, you look at something like Merge or even Pulse Weekly.
Yeah.
There were tons of venues. There were tons of shows going on. Mm-hmm. So how did these developers come in here and think there isn't shit happening and then knocked it all down?
Yeah.
Now you have none of these venues. And you don't have these publications to talk about them. Mm. Would you consider what we're doing progress, or are we just taking a bunch of missteps right now? What do you think?
Well, you know, I wish it was like it used to be. I wish that the people out there maybe had a little more curiosity about unknown things, you know, like unknown music. Like when I started, if there was a band coming to town that was out of town and they had a little name, everyone would just show up because what else you're going to do, you know? But it's true, too. The bigger venues like Croc Rock, they would bring bands in, you know, and you'd have to have an opener for the band. So that was a good thing because you get a whole bunch of people out for the main band, and then maybe, get an opener that's sort of similar, and that is exposure for them. But that doesn't exist, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, I had no great love for the place, but they would bring bands in that would bring people, the old way of saying, I want to go see this band because I heard their music and they rock. And now I don't know where that is.
Well, it's like we need a croc rock that's run properly.
Yeah, right.
And we need multiple of those, not just one.
Right.
Like,
to get band, because there's plenty of bands here, but people they tend to be, familiar. They like the familiar. So if a band is even just sort of bubbling under, they're going to draw more people than local bands, I don't know. I really don't know.
So do you think that musicians should try to do more shows in existing restaurants and venues to get it started and then kind of add in dedicated venues?
Yeah, I don't know. It should be organic. I would think that you would just...
And that's the key word, organic.
Yeah.
Right? And like
come naturally, don't force it.
There is a new music venue being built here in downtown Allentown,
Mm-hmm.
kind of modeling it after the croc rock thing.
Yeah.
But it's not the organic approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's the real estate approach.
Yeah,
It's the how much can I make on it, which I get it, you got to make money.
Right.
But at the same time, as far as I can tell, they didn't bring in any musicians or anyone from the community to help them design this space. They are just copying what other venues of that size are doing around the country. Mm. And of course, they're bringing in apparently Live Nation to run it. Mm. We know exactly what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And yes, the main benefit of that will be the potential opportunities for young musicians to maybe be an opener. Aside from that, it's a money grab.
Yeah.
It's a money grab.
I just mentioned Croc Rock because I just thought, well, and I don't think we ever played there. We played at Stars, which I somehow relate to. I think it was the same people maybe running it. Stars used to be down on Dauphin Drive or something.
Yeah. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, we played with the Ramones there and a few times, and it was some place to go too. It's like socially, okay, so-and-so's coming to town, who are the big acts coming to town? And I just don't hear about that much anymore. Maybe Music Fest Cafe has people sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah, they just had the Melvins there, which seems like the weirdest possible venue for the Melvins.
Yeah, and again,
you guys should be playing with the Melvins. What's up with that, man?
No, that's the thing. People,
you and King Buzzo would hit it off.
It's
or become mortal enemies.
We actually, I think we did a little tour with their bass player. He had his own soul. It literally is just him and his bass.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And he gets out there. I'm trying to think of his name. Oh, Thrones.
Yeah.
And interesting guy. It's sort of. But that's the thing. Like, it's a very who you know kind of thing. And you would think people know me by now, but a lot of people don't. Like I said, there's whole vast quantities of people that have never heard my music and quite possibly never will. Anytime we can play, we play. So it's not like we're turning down gigs.
Well, you know what it is? I think American society especially is so obsessed with chasing fads. Mm-hmm. And they're jumping from the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
Yeah.
Which is, I know you have a range of stuff you do, but it's different. You're experimenting and you're trying. You're not just chasing these trends to get the audience. Mm-hmm. And I think, first of all, it's hard for a music venue to exist properly if it's doing that, because they're constantly changing. I mean, look at CBGB, right? It became a niche thing.
Yeah.
Not what the owner had intended for it to be, but once he found out what audience was supportive, he went all in.
Yeah.
We need those niche places.
Yeah.
I think you need general places, but everyone wants to cast the widest possible net and get as much as you can. Mm-hmm. That shit doesn't last.
Yeah.
My one friend Chris Jones was telling me a couple episodes ago a place in Allentown called EGAZ. Did you ever hear of that place?
No, I haven't.
It was for like experimental jazz and avant-garde music. We need spaces like that. And of course, those places only last for a couple of years.
Yeah. You got to pay the rent, I guess.
So if anyone's listening, Brother JT needs you to start a space in the Lehigh Valley. Invite him out.
Yeah.
Let's get the Melvins to come out too, because
I could just fix up my basement a little.
Why not?
People come to me.
Well, I know our one friend, Lunch Trucks, they have a show It's in Albertus. It's tonight. I think it's called Barnapalooza.
Oh, okay.
It's like in a barn.
It's in a barn?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And I believe they also have another venue called the Truck Stop. I think it's just in their basement, just like that.
Yeah.
But again, with house shows, they don't typically last too long because neighbors.
No, I think about it sometimes. I see these empty spaces and I'm thinking, that would be a good club. But then I think about what would actually have to happen, to do that. And
I think it all starts with having more access to funding and resources to start these spaces, because us musicians and artists on our own, we don't have the resources just out of the blue open a space up, but we acknowledge these things need to exist. So yeah, anyone listening, start up some spaces. Lehigh Valley needs to have more spaces. I know Bethlehem, they have a growing music scene. They're really starting to work together and collaborate in a much larger way. And I hope to see that grow. I hope to see more of that in Allentown.
Yeah.
I hope to see more of that in Easton, which Easton just lost, what was it, One Center Square closed, at the end of last year, 2022?
Yeah, they're making it into something else.
I think like apartments or something like that. It's like...
More money in that.
I mean, it's the center of Easton. Why would you... you need the things to happen right there.
Right.
Unfortunately, even though there are issues, I think there is a lot of hope because people are hungry for these things. And we were able to just start a satellite gallery at the Americas Hotel. And if all things go well, we may be opening a jazz club there as well.
Oh, cool.
In the basement, the old venue there. They wanted to make it into a nightclub. We're trying to talk them out of it. Yeah, you'll make more money off a nightclub short term. But if you do that, it's not going to last long term. I mean, they told me that they're going to be paying over $3,000 a night in security just to run in a nightclub.
Oh, geez.
It's like, let's...
See,
You have a jazz club, you're not going to need security, man. People are going to be hanging out, chilling out. And then you have open jams, open mics, things like that. Do you think that's the kind of stuff we need?
I would like it. I'd support that. Yeah, sure.
Is it a place you would just go to hang out in general?
Yeah, I'd like there to be a place where you can just go and there's not a lot of pressure or anything. You just go a lot of space and watch some music and maybe you pay a little extra or something. But if it's nice, that's worth it.
Absolutely. And that hotel was built at the height of the jazz age, so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And that shows how much we're not chasing trends. We're trying to create a venue around a music genre that peaked 100 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place in Easton Lafayette Hotel.
Lafayette Bar.
Yeah, and bar. And you walk in there, it's like stepping into 1956, because smoke everywhere. It looks like it was all the stuff on the walls looked like they were put there in 1956.
Absolutely, that's a great place.
And the guy loves jazz, and I think he pays, because there's never a cover charge. He pays the bands out of his own pocket just to have a great New York jazz band there. But it's rare. It's like not every month.
He does that thing once a month, or not even once a month.
Right.
Yeah. And I keep missing those shows, unfortunately, because we often have things the same night. Is there anything you want to say about the upcoming show? What people should look out for? Any new material?
Yeah, I mean, we're learning, or we have learned 5 or 6 songs from the new record, if you want to call that, the new collection of songs. And so we'll be almost all fairly new material, and because we're tired of the other stuff.
What about merchandise? You got some albums, some shirts.
I carry some CDs with me that people sent back to me because they couldn't sell them. And I'm basically just saying, do you want one? Here, throw it. They want to give me a few bucks, that's fine. But that and my ill-fated book that I put out, that I underestimated or overestimated the appeal of books.
That's heartbreaking.
It's it's unreadable, but it's pretty. It's nice to look at. It's color every page, and I just thought people would like that, but they didn't. So I bring them along just in case I can fob a few off on people. But I'll have a little bit. But I don't like doing that.
I guess we also have to create a reading culture. I mean, after all, we don't have a single bookstore in Allentown. So
yeah, I mean that's one way of getting your books, I guess.
Yeah,
or just leaving them in art galleries, maybe. I should have brought some with me, actually.
Well, hey, bring some to the show on Saturday.
That's right.
Definitely grab a copy from you.
Right,
Keep here in our permanent collection. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for young musicians that might be getting their start and might not know what to do to get going?
Well, play as much as you can and play out of town if you can. I don't know if I would say play New York if you can, but I don't know if that's even a center anymore. That's where you find the people who can help you at shows more than networking online, go to a show, they see what you're doing, and maybe someone comes up and says, hey, I like what you're doing. Do you want to do a show here? And it snowballs, hopefully. So, yeah, play as much as you can. Don't worry about money. It's not ever going to be money. So just get used to that idea, and then it frees you up because you're not worrying about.
Yeah, just prepare yourself.
Yeah.
If you're in it for money, you might want to choose
get
a
a
different
job.
career, at least for the first decade or two.
Don't quit your day job. Keep your day job, but maybe don't let it get in the way of the music either.
But don't stop dreaming at the same time.
No.
It's
I mean,
important
it's
we follow
possible.
dreams. Yeah.
It's possible. But I don't even connect music with money anymore. It's just like, is it working? Are the people happy? Am I happy? Then, if there's a little money afterwards, fine.
Well, and you're a very prolific musician. You're going to leave behind a hell of a legacy for people to discover for all of time.
I guess. I hope so.
Absolutely.
I want it to be like my record of the time I was here, and not just music, but the videos and the books and I do artwork and all that. It's just like endless.
Well, and I read that you record about 40 songs a year, right?
Well, that was before maybe. No, but I mean, I've got a lot of songs.
So there's probably a lot of unreleased stuff kicking
Oh,
around.
yeah, I got tons of unreleased stuff.
Any plans for that?
Well, like I said, if I can crank out a video for a song, I'll put it out. And a lot of the songs I'm writing now are just for video, so I'm trying to make them conducive to that medium, like images that are easy to draw.
Wow.
Instead of like something that maybe really means something to me, but something that will be amusing in the context of a video.
I like that because that's almost a different approach to your...
and you got to keep it short too,
Yeah.
because some of these formats, platforms don't like over 2 minutes.
Yeah.
A lot of them are like a minute and a half, but they do a little something, and then they're out of there, and you can move on.
Well, and you should do some kind of rock opera one day, the JT rock opera.
Yeah, I just don't.
Long format.
Yeah, it's people's attention spans, I think, are getting shorter.
Oh, they absolutely are. That's the thing.
And I'm trying to like think, even playing live, I'm thinking, should we cut this verse? Because I'm losing them.
Man.
But I don't really do that. But I mean, I do think about it.
Interesting. Is that more of a recent thing?
Yeah, I noticed it. I think, some of the songs I wrote 10 years ago, I would never put out in their full form now. I just cut until it's, and there's a beauty to that. Good editing there's an art in and of itself.
Sure,
just
yeah,
like getting it down to, okay, you said what you needed to say. I think they got it. Let's wrap it up with hopefully an explosion or something at the end. Endings are very important.
Absolutely. Any encouraging words for anyone else out there while we have Brother JT?
Keep going. Don't let it get you down. I was thinking there was this one song I had that the chorus was basically, how else could it be? In a way of saying, like as a comfort, to say, like, what is the use of regretting? It's done. It already happened. You might think I could have, should have, all this stuff, but it happened. Deal with it, accept it, keep moving forward, because regret is just, unless you learn something from it, is useless.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah.
Very heavy.
And maybe you can relax about your life a little if you just say, this is exactly what was supposed to happen. Even if it's not what I wanted to happen, but this is what is happening. And, embrace it if you can.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brother JT, for taking the time to chat.
Thank you for having me.
It was truly special to hear so many of the fascinating tales and the time that you've spent being a musician and an artist throughout your career here. And I, along with many other folks, we're grateful to have you continue making music and performing for us all.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And for everyone out there, be sure to make it to the WMUH show at the Alternative Gallery on Saturday, October 7th. It features Brother JT, Pale Fang, and the Redos. Doors are at 7 p.m. and admission is $10. Come support your local music scene and help artists like Brother JT keep doing their thing for years to come. It's going to be a great show, so don't miss it. Thank you again, Brother JT, for visiting the Art Bazaar. I'll see you soon, buddy.
Bye-bye.